The day my son walked into my hospital room and casually announced he had sold our family farm without so much as a word to me was the day my heart broke in a way I never thought possible. Not because of the land itself, though that farm had been the blood, sweat, and lifeblood of my family for over 4 generations, but because of what it revealed about the son I had raised. "Mom," Stephen said flatly, holding his phone in one hand as though he were scrolling through social media instead of throwing my entire world into flames. "I sold the farm. You're dying anyway." I figured I'd save us all the time and paperwork of waiting for the will to process. He said it so casually.
No hesitación. No apology.
Just a simple statement, as if it were the most practical thing in the world. He even had the audacity to show me the documents on his phone, the digital proof of my life's work reduced to numbers on a screen. In that moment, something inside me shifted. For 70 years, I had lived on that land. I had buried my husband there, raised Stephen there, built memories and weathered storms. The Thompson farm was more than acres of soil. It was a testament to our resilience, our bloodline, our name. And Stephen had sold it.
Just like that.
But instead of tears, I smiled. Not from joy, but from the kind of bitter amusement that comes when you realize life has handed you a twist no one could have written. I looked at him and said the words that would haunt him for weeks. "Too bad you didn't wait, sweetheart. You would have inherited the farm and everything I buried in the backyard."
I didn't clarify.
I didn't explain. I simply left him with those words, and I watched his confident smirk falter for the first time that day. If you're listening to this story, I need you to understand. It didn't begin with that single moment in the hospital. No, Stephen's betrayal wasn't some sudden storm. It had been building for years, creeping in like ivy over an old fence, until one day it choked everything it touched. 3 weeks earlier, I had collapsed in my kitchen. The sharp pain in my abdomen had been so severe, I thought I was being split open from the inside. My vision blurred. I remember reaching out, my fingers brushing the edge of the counter before everything went black. When I woke, it wasn't to the soothing voice of my son, worried sick about his mother.
No.
Stephen had found me sprawled on the kitchen floor, unconscious for who knows how long. And his first words, instead of "Mom, are you okay?" were, "Look at this mess, Mom." The soup pot spilled everywhere. That was Stephen, always more concerned about the inconvenience to him than the well-being of anyone else. At Kansas City General, the doctor came in with what felt like a death sentence, stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
6 months at best.
I remember gripping the bedsheet with trembling hands as the words sank in. And Stephen's reaction? Not shock.
Not sorrow.
Not even denial. His first concern was paperwork. He asked me if my will was finalized. That should have been my warning. That should have told me exactly where his heart was. But like every mother, I tried to reason it away. I told myself he was just being practical, trying to take care of things. But no, Stephen was never practical. Stephen was opportunistic. Our farm had carried the Thompson name since 1889. My great-grandfather had claimed those 150 acres with nothing but a mule, a wagon, and a dream. Every inch of it had been worked by hand, bloodied by labor, and watered with sweat. My father passed it to me, and I kept it alive after my husband, Robert, died unexpectedly of a heart attack. I thought Stephen would carry on the legacy. As a child, he had run barefoot across the fields, chasing chickens and begging to help with chores. He used to follow me into the barn, his small hands reaching out to mimic everything I did. But something changed. By the time he graduated with his degree in finance, paid for by the sweat of that very farm, he had decided that farming was beneath him. He came back only for holidays, accompanied by Jessica, his polished wife who sneered at the sight of muddy boots. Together, they treated my farm like some rustic museum they were forced to visit once or twice a year. "When will you sell this place and move somewhere civilized?" Jessica would ask with that wrinkled nose of hers, as if hay and wood smoke were offensive odors. Stephen would laugh, but I saw the look in his eyes. The gleam. The calculation. He wasn't laughing at her suggestion. He was entertaining it. And now, lying in that hospital bed, I realized this had been his plan all along. But what Stephen didn't know, what he couldn't have possibly imagined, was that I wasn't as helpless as he thought. I had weathered storms he'd never understand. I had outlasted hardships he couldn't comprehend. And buried deep in that backyard, across the soil he had so carelessly sold, was a secret I had kept hidden for decades. It had started the day Robert died. He had left me not only with grief, but with debts stacked higher than hay bales. The creditors came circling like vultures, ready to strip away everything we had worked for. I thought I was ruined. I thought the farm would slip through my fingers. But Robert, secretive as he was, had left me one final gift, a safety deposit box filled with documents, insurance policies, and one handwritten note. "Maggie," it said, "don't let the oil company cheat you. This land has mineral rights worth millions. They'll try to lowball you. Don't fall for it." And he was right. Robert's letter shook me to my core. I had always known he was a cautious man, sometimes secretive, but I never realized the lengths he had gone to in order to protect us. When I read those words about the oil company, my heart pounded like a hammer in my chest. For weeks after his death, I kept that letter folded in my apron pocket, carrying it with me like a talisman. The debts were crushing, the creditors knocking at my door daily, and I was one bad harvest away from losing the farm completely. But Robert had planted hope in my hands, and I was not about to squander it. Sure enough, within months, men in polished shoes and pressed suits appeared at my door. They introduced themselves as representatives from Petroleum Solutions Incorporated. They wore slick smiles, carried thick folders, and spoke with voices dripping honey. "Mrs. Thompson," one of them said, "we'd like to make you an offer for drilling rights on your land. A nice little sum, quick cash, nothing complicated. You'll hardly even notice we're here." But I had Robert's words echoing in my mind. "They'll try to lowball you. Don't fall for it." So instead of signing their first offer, I pushed back. I hired an attorney, an old family friend named Charles Whitman, who dug into every clause and figure until those smooth-talking men stopped smiling. By the time the contract was finalized, it wasn't a lump sum for pennies. It was a lease with royalties that promised steady income for as long as the wells produced. That signing bonus alone was enough to clear every debt, pay off the mortgage, and put food on the table for years to come. And when the royalty checks started rolling in, I knew Robert had been right. Our land was worth far more than anyone had imagined. But here's the thing about sudden wealth. It changes people. It destroys families. I had seen it before in neighbors who struck oil. Greed poisoned them, turned brothers into enemies, parents into tyrants, children into strangers. I refused to let that happen to me and Stephen. He was still a boy then, and I didn't want him growing up with dollar signs in his eyes. So I told no one. Not him, not our neighbors, not even my sister. Every check that came, I quietly converted into cash or gold. I purchased waterproof containers, sealed them tight, and buried them across the farm. Some I marked with stones only I would recognize. Others I memorized by heart. Trees, fence posts, the corner of the barn. It was my secret, my safety net, my insurance against the unpredictable storms of life. Years passed. The wells kept producing. The stash grew larger. By the time Stephen graduated from college, there was a small fortune hidden beneath that soil. But I never told him. I wanted him to live his life, to build his own future, not to wait like a vulture for mine to end. Unfortunately, that's exactly what he became anyway. Stephen came back from college polished and proud, with big ideas and little patience. Farming, he said, was for people with no ambition. He wanted skyscrapers, business meetings, a suit and tie. I didn't stand in his way. I gave him my blessing, even paid off his student loans with quiet satisfaction. He thought it was from my savings, never suspecting the truth. When he married Jessica, I welcomed her into the family with open arms, though I saw the disdain in her eyes the moment she stepped onto the farm. She looked at my chickens, my barns, my weathered porch, as if they were relics of a life beneath her. "Stephen," she whispered one night when she thought I couldn't hear, "this place is depressing. You're not really planning to inherit this, are you? I held my tongue. Stephen laughed, but I saw the flicker of agreement in his gaze. From then on, the visits became fewer, shorter, and colder. They came for holidays out of obligation, never warmth. And all the while, beneath their very feet, lay riches they couldn't imagine. Gold coins, bundles of cash, documents worth millions. They tossed frisbees with their children over ground that could have changed their lives forever, and they never knew. I smiled quietly to myself each time. It wasn't spite, it was protection. If Stephen knew, if Jessica knew, greed would have eaten them alive. But greed is a funny thing. Even without knowing the truth, it still found a way to consume them. So when Stephen stood in that hospital room, smug as a fox, and told me he had sold the farm for $500,000, thinking he was cashing out on my life's work, I almost laughed. He had no idea what he had thrown away. No idea what secrets lay beneath that soil. And yet, fate has a way of twisting the knife deeper. Because the very next morning, my doctor rushed into my room with a look of panic on his face. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "I owe you a huge apology. There's been a terrible mistake. The lab mixed up your results with another patient's. You don't have stage 4 cancer. You had a severe infection, serious, but treatable. With antibiotics and rest, you'll make a full recovery." I wasn't dying, which meant Stephen hadn't just robbed me of my legacy. He had done it under false pretenses, under the assumption I was already gone. And I was very much alive. The moment the news settled, I felt a fire reignite in my chest, stronger than anything I had felt in years. I wasn't weak. I wasn't helpless. And I wasn't about to let my son walk away with everything my family had built. I called Miranda Hawthorne, a lawyer known in our county for being sharper than a scalpel and twice as ruthless. When I told her what Stephen had done, selling property without consent, forging signatures, exploiting a supposedly dying parent, her eyes lit up with the thrill of battle. "This is fraud, Mrs. Thompson," she said firmly.
Forgery.
"Elder abuse. We can reverse the sale, sue for damages, and, if you wish, press criminal charges. He could go to prison." But as I sat there, picturing Stephen's smug grin, I realized prison wasn't the punishment I wanted.
No.
That would be too easy. "I don't want him in jail," I told her. "I want him to live with what he's done. I want him to think he's won, to think he's gotten away with it. And then, I want the ground to collapse under him." Miranda smiled slowly, the kind of smile that told me she understood exactly what I meant. "Mrs. Thompson," she said softly, "I believe we're going to get along just fine." And that's how my plan for the sweetest revenge began. Miranda wasted no time. She pulled every document, every deed, every scrap of paper that tied me to that farm. "Your son," she explained, adjusting her glasses as she shuffled through papers, "did not have the authority to sell this property. Not without your explicit, written consent. Which means the buyer, whoever he is, purchased nothing but air." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words sink in. For the first time in weeks, I felt like the ground under my feet was steady again. Stephen thought he was clever, selling the farm from beneath me. He thought my signature, scribbled on some forged document, would erase me. But Miranda saw straight through it. "We'll file an injunction immediately," she continued, her pen scratching across a yellow legal pad. "That'll freeze the sale until a judge can review. Meanwhile, we'll gather evidence of the forgery. Handwriting experts, witnesses, the works. When this hits court, he won't stand a chance." Her confidence was like medicine. For the first time since that hospital room, I breathed without heaviness. But as satisfying as it was to plan legal action, my mind kept drifting back to what Stephen and Jessica didn't know, the fortune hidden beneath the very backyard they had sold. The irony was delicious. They had rushed, greedy and blind, to sell the land for $500,000, when just below their feet lay riches far beyond that number. And now, if Miranda's plan succeeded, that land would come back to me, along with everything buried beneath it. Still, I wasn't naive. This wouldn't be easy. Stephen wasn't alone. Jessica had her claws in this too, and together they were ruthless. When they visited me the next week, it wasn't with flowers or sympathy. It was with smugness radiating off them like heat waves. "Mom," Stephen said smoothly, "the sale's gone through. You'll have more than enough money to cover your, final expenses." Jessica smirked behind him, her arms crossed, as if she had orchestrated the entire thing. I smiled faintly, masking the storm in my chest. "That's very thoughtful of you both. If only they knew. If only they realized how far ahead of them I really was." Later that evening, Miranda called with news that made my pulse race. "The buyer's name is Harold Benson," she said. "Local developer. He's been eyeing farmland in the county for years. He believes he's sitting on prime ground for luxury housing." Harold Benson. I knew the name. He wasn't just a developer. He was notorious for destroying farmland, tearing down century-old barns, and paving over history in the name of profit. He was a vulture, plain and simple. "He thinks he owns it?" I asked. Miranda chuckled dryly. "He believes he does. But once the court reviews your case, we'll prove otherwise." Still, she paused. "You need to be prepared. This could get ugly. Men like Benson don't like losing." Ugly didn't scare me. What scared me was the thought of Stephen knowing what lay beneath that land. If word ever got out about the fortune buried in waterproof containers, chaos would erupt. The secret had survived decades. It had to survive this. That night, as I sat by the fireplace, I thought back to the day Robert first buried the money. His strong hands, calloused from years of work, scooping soil like it was nothing. The way he patted the ground afterward, as if sealing a pact with the earth itself. "This land will protect us," he had said. And it had. For decades, it had sheltered not just our crops but our future. The thought of greedy developers bulldozing over that sacred ground made my stomach twist. The next morning, I went to the farm. It wasn't mine on paper anymore, not yet, but I had lived there long enough to know every path, every creak of the barn door, every smell of hay and soil. As I walked the fields, I could almost hear Robert's voice again, reminding me that the land had never betrayed us.
People did.
But the land? The land was loyal. Standing by the old oak tree near the backyard, I felt the weight of years pressing down on me. Beneath my feet, sealed in those containers, lay the security Robert had left us. And here I was, the only one who knew. The kids ran across the yard, Jessica calling after them from the porch. None of them had any idea what secrets the soil held. I smiled to myself. Let them play. Let them think they had stripped me of everything. One day soon, when the truth came crashing down, it wouldn't be me left empty-handed. A week later, Miranda and I sat in court. Stephen was there, smug as ever, Jessica at his side. Benson sat behind them, a mountain of a man with sharp eyes that scanned the room like a hawk. The judge entered, and silence fell. Papers rustled. Miranda rose, sharp and commanding, laying out the case piece by piece. My ownership, the forged signature, the lack of consent. Her voice was steady, her arguments airtight. When Stephen's lawyer tried to argue, Miranda cut him down with precision. "Your Honor," she said, holding up the deed, "this property has been in Mrs. Thompson's name for over 40 years. There is no record, none, that she ever transferred ownership. This so-called sale is not just invalid, it's fraudulent." The judge leaned forward, peering at Stephen. "Did you forge your mother's signature?" Stephen stammered, his face flushing red. I was just trying to help her. She's sick." "I am not sick," I interrupted firmly, my voice echoing in the courtroom. There was a mistake in my diagnosis. And even if I were, I would never have given consent to sell my land. My son acted out of greed, not care. Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica's face paled, her smugness evaporating. Benson's jaw tightened. The judge slammed his gavel. "This court rules in favor of Mrs. Thompson. The sale is hereby voided, effective immediately. Ownership remains with the plaintiff. Furthermore, the defendant may face criminal charges for fraud and forgery pending further review." It was over. Just like that, the farm was mine again. Stephen sat frozen, disbelief etched across his face. Jessica muttered something under her breath, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. Benson stormed out, his plans crumbling in real time. As for me, I sat there, calm and steady, my heart beating like a drum. Not only had I reclaimed my land, I had reclaimed my dignity. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. The real victory was knowing that beneath that backyard, untouched and unseen, my secret remained safe.
For now.
Because in the shadows of that courtroom, in the tightening jaw of Harold Benson, I saw something that unsettled me. He wasn't the kind of man to give up easily. And if he suspected, even for a moment, that there was more to that farm than soil and cornfields, the courthouse victory felt sweet, but the taste didn't last long. By the next morning, Benson's shadow stretched over the farm like a thundercloud. Men like him didn't lose gracefully. I should have been celebrating. The judge had restored my farm. The law had recognized Stephen's betrayal for what it was, and I finally had breathing room again. But my gut told me it wasn't over. Not with Harold Benson. Sure enough, the first sign came just 2 days later. I was sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, when a black SUV pulled up the dirt road. Out stepped Benson, his suit pressed, his smile tight, his eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Mrs. Thompson," he greeted, his voice oily. "Mind if I have a word?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him, waiting. He chuckled, glancing around at the barns, the fields, the wide stretch of backyard. "Beautiful land you've got here. Shame about all the trouble in court. I'll be frank, ma'am, I don't lose easily. That ruling? Temporary setback. You see, I don't walk away from prime real estate like this." I folded my arms. "This land isn't for sale. Everything's for sale." His eyes gleamed. "And if you were smart, you'd cash out now. Before someone else makes life difficult for you." It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. He left me with a business card, crisp and clean, with his number scrawled on the back. As his SUV disappeared down the road, I crumpled the card and tossed it into the fire. But I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I noticed tire tracks cutting through the far field. They hadn't been there before. Someone had driven onto my land under cover of darkness. I checked the barn, the chicken coop, the shed. Nothing was stolen, but I knew in my bones it was a warning. A week later, Stephen came knocking. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice frantic. "Mom, you don't understand. Benson's dangerous. You can't just—" I cut him off cold. "Don't you dare pretend to care about me now. You sold this farm out from under me. You would have left me with nothing. You don't get to lecture me about danger." He winced, running a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake, okay? I thought you were dying. Jessica," she pushed me. "I thought I was securing our future. But Benson, he doesn't let things go. He won't stop until he gets this land." I stared at him for a long moment. For the first time in years, I saw fear in his eyes. Not greed, not smugness.
Fear.
"Stephen," I said quietly, "do you even know what's buried in this soil?" He frowned. "Buried?" The question slipped from my lips before I could stop it. My heart thundered. I covered quickly. "Buried beneath generations of work.
Sweat.
Sacrifice. That's what's here. And I'll be damned if I let Benson, or you, or anyone take it from me." But his suspicion lingered. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "What did you mean by buried?" I waved him off. "Go home, Stephen." After he left, I paced the living room like a caged animal. My secret had stayed hidden for decades. But now, with Benson sniffing around and Stephen growing suspicious, the risk of discovery grew by the day. That night, I grabbed a lantern and headed into the backyard. The moon was bright, the air crisp. I walked to the old oak tree, the one Robert and I had chosen all those years ago as our first hiding spot. My knees creaked as I knelt, brushing away the soil with my hands. My fingers touched the edge of a container, cool and solid beneath the dirt. Relief flooded me. Still there. Still safe. But for how long? I reburied it carefully, patting the soil flat, then stood and looked around the yard. Shadows stretched long across the fields. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw movement near the fence line, a figure watching, but when I blinked it was gone. 2 days later, the sheriff stopped by. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, removing his hat, "I've had reports of trespassers near your property. Neighbors heard engines at night, saw lights moving across your fields. Might be teenagers causing trouble, might be worse. Keep your doors locked." Worse. I knew exactly what worse meant. Benson. That night, as the wind howled against the windows, I realized my secret was no longer safe. The containers, the cash, the gold, it was all at risk. If Benson ever dug in the right spot, he'd find everything. I had to act. The following morning, I called Miranda. "I need to move some valuables," I told her carefully. "Valuables?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Mrs. Thompson, what exactly are you keeping out there?" I hesitated. For years, I had trusted no one with this secret. But Miranda had fought for me, believed me, stood by me when my own son betrayed me. Slowly, I told her the truth, or at least part of it. "My husband made sure we were protected," I said. "There's money, gold, buried across the farm, enough to change everything. If Benson ever finds out," silence hummed through the phone. Then Miranda exhaled. "Mrs. Thompson, you're sitting on a fortune. No wonder Benson won't let go." "I don't care about the money," I said firmly. "I care about keeping it out of his hands. Out of Stephen's hands. It was meant to secure this family's future, not destroy it." She was quiet for a long moment before replying. "Then we need to move it. Somewhere safe. Somewhere no one will think to look." My stomach nodded. Moving it meant unearthing everything Robert and I had hidden, disturbing the pact we made with the land. But maybe Miranda was right. Maybe the time for secrecy was over. That evening, as I watched the sun sink behind the fields, I whispered to the soil, "Forgive me, Robert. I have to protect it again." But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Somewhere out there, in the darkness, Benson was waiting. And sooner or later, he would dig deep enough to uncover more than just soil. The decision to move the fortune gnawed at me. For decades, I had trusted the land to guard our secret. Robert and I had chosen those hiding spots with care, believing that the soil itself would shield us better than any bank vault. But times had changed. The vultures were circling now, and secrecy wasn't protection anymore, it was vulnerability. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I gathered sturdy crates, heavy-duty locks, and rented a storage unit in a neighboring town under a false name. Miranda arranged for a private security firm to transport whatever I unearthed. Everything had to be handled quietly, discreetly. If Benson caught even a whiff of what I was doing, he would descend like a wolf. On the third night, I armed myself with a shovel and lantern. The moon was thin, a silver sliver hiding behind clouds. My heart thudded with each step across the yard. The first container lay beneath the oak tree. My hands trembled as I dug, soil clinging to my nails, sweat running down my back despite the cool air. The scrape of metal on metal made my chest tighten. And then there it was. A sealed drum, waterproof, untouched by time. I dragged it free, breathless. My lantern's glow revealed faint rust, but the locks held. With shaking fingers, I pried it open. Inside, bundles of cash stared back at me, crisp despite their age, bound with rubber bands. Gold coins gleamed faintly in the flickering light, their edges catching the glow like fire. Tears filled my eyes. Robert's foresight, his sacrifice, it was all here, preserved in silence for decades. I pressed my hand against the treasure, whispering, "You did this for us. For me." But the moment of tenderness didn't last. The hairs on my neck prickled. Someone was near. I snapped the lantern closed, plunging myself into darkness. My ears strained. At first, nothing but the rustle of leaves. Then, the crunch of footsteps in the field. My breath caught. Benson. It had to be. I crouched low, heart hammering, the container half buried at my feet. The footsteps grew closer, deliberate, steady. My hand reached for the revolver Robert had left me years ago, still tucked into my coat pocket. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched. My lungs screamed for air. Then laughter. Low, mocking. "I knew you were hiding something, old woman." The voice sliced through me. Not Benson. Stephen. I rose slowly, lantern flickering back to life, casting shadows across his face. He stood at the fence line, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, his smirk cruel. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "I could ask you the same," he sneered, stepping closer. "Digging holes in the middle of the night? Looks suspicious. What did you bury, Mom? Or should I say, what did you hide from us?" Panic surged.
He couldn't see. Not yet.
I kicked soil over the container, desperate to conceal it, but his eyes narrowed, sharp as knives. "I knew it," he whispered. "All those years scraping by, you letting me think we were broke, while you sat on a fortune." His laugh was bitter. "You lied to me. To all of us." "You don't understand," I said firmly, clutching the shovel like a shield. "This wasn't about greed. This was about survival. About protecting this family." "Protecting us?" he spat. "You condemned me. Do you know what I could have built with that money? The life I could have had." "Stephen," my voice cracked. "That money was never meant to be wasted on greed. It was meant to keep this farm alive. To give you something real, something lasting. Not skyscrapers. Not suits. Roots." But my words didn't reach him. His eyes gleamed with something dark, resentment that had been festering for years. Before I could react, he lunged, shoving me aside. My body hit the ground hard, pain shooting through my hip. He clawed at the soil, yanking the container into the open. His laughter turned manic as he pried it open, revealing the stacks of cash. "Oh my God," he breathed, eyes wide with hunger. "It's true. It's all true." He grabbed fistfuls of money, letting it fall through his hands like rain. "Jessica was right. You were holding out on us. And you thought you could keep this secret forever? Not anymore." I forced myself to my feet, fury flooding my veins. "Stephen, stop. You don't know what you're doing."
He spun on me, wild-eyed.
"Don't try to take this from me, Mom. You had your chance. You kept me in the dark, treated me like a child while you buried treasure in the dirt.
But now?
Now it's mine. All of it." My hand tightened on the revolver. My son, my flesh and blood, was standing before me, transformed into something unrecognizable. Greed had consumed him whole. Before I could speak, headlights cut through the night. An engine roared closer. Stephen froze, the money still in his fists. The SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the field. The door slammed. "Benson." He stepped out, his broad figure illuminated by the headlights. His smile was slow, predatory. Well, what do we have here?" Stephen paled, shoving the cash back into the container like a guilty child caught red-handed. "It's not what it looks like. Oh, it's exactly what it looks like." Benson's eyes flicked from the container to me, then back to Stephen. "So this is the secret. No wonder you fought so hard for this land, Mrs. Thompson. No wonder you wouldn't sell. You weren't guarding memories. You were guarding treasure." My blood ran cold. The secret was out. And in that moment, under the glare of Benson's headlights, I realized everything Robert and I had worked for, everything we had buried, was no longer safe. The ground itself had betrayed me. The headlights burned across the backyard like interrogation lamps. Stephen stood frozen, the container at his feet, his fists still smudged with soil. I could see the sweat glistening on his forehead, his eyes darting between me and Benson like a trapped animal. Benson strolled forward slowly, deliberate as a predator savoring its hunt. His boots crunched the gravel, his shadow stretching long and dark across the soil. "You know," he said casually, his voice low and mocking, "I've spent a lifetime chasing land deals. And all along, The real treasure wasn't the dirt, it was what was under it. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze sweeping over the open container.
Cash.
Gold. God knows what else you've buried here. You two really thought you could keep this from the world. Stephen swallowed hard. It's not yours. This is my mother's land. This belongs to her. Benson smirked, his eyes flicking toward me. That's so, Mrs. Thompson?
Does it belong to you?
Or to your greedy little boy here, who just about dug it up in front of me? The weight of his words pressed down on me. If I admitted the truth, I handed him the leverage he needed. If I denied it, he would dig anyway. Benson was like a bloodhound now. He'd caught the scent, and nothing would stop him. This land, I said carefully, my voice steady, belongs to me. And what's buried here belongs to no one but my family. Robert and I built this life, protected it, kept it safe for decades. You have no claim here, Mr. Benson. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. Claim? I don't need a claim. I need an opportunity. And you've just given me one. Before I could respond, Benson snapped his fingers. From the SUV, two men emerged, big, broad-shouldered, the kind of men who didn't ask questions. They strode forward, their eyes cold, their movements efficient. Stephen backed away instantly. Wait, what are you doing? Benson chuckled.
Relax, son.
We're just helping ourselves to what should have been mine in the first place. Think of it as payment for my wasted time. The men grabbed the container, hefting it as if it weighed nothing, and carried it toward the SUV. My chest tightened, rage surging through me. That was Robert's work, his legacy, our future. And Benson was stealing it like a thief in the night. No. The word ripped from my throat. I stepped forward, revolver drawn, my hands trembling but my aim steady. Put it back.
Now.
The men froze. Stephen gasped, his face pale. Benson raised an eyebrow, then laughed softly. Mrs. Thompson, you surprise me. I didn't take you for the type to pull a gun. I'm the type who protects what's mine, I snapped. You have no right. None of you. His men shifted uneasily, waiting for a signal. Benson studied me for a long moment, his smirk fading. You think you can stop me with that little pistol? You're outnumbered.
Outmatched.
And frankly, you don't have the guts. I steadied my breath, my finger brushing the trigger. Try me. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then Stephen broke it. Mom, please, he whispered, stepping toward me, his hands raised. Put it down. Don't make this worse. We can split it. Me, you, even Benson. We can all take a share. No one has to get hurt. I turned my eyes on him, and the betrayal in my chest ached worse than any wound. My own son, siding with the man who came to rob us. Stephen, I said quietly, my voice breaking, you don't understand. This money isn't cursed, but the greed around it is. It destroyed you before you even touched it. He flinched, but his eyes stayed fixed on the container being loaded into the SUV. Benson cleared his throat. Touching speech. Really? But enough wasting time. He signaled his men again. Load it up. Let's go. My grip tightened. For a moment, I considered firing into the air, scaring them off, forcing them to drop the container. But deep down, I knew Benson wasn't bluffing. He'd bring more men, more trucks, and next time, he wouldn't leave until every inch of my land was dug up. So instead, I lowered the revolver slowly, my heart shattering. Benson's smirk returned, smug and victorious. Smart woman. You know when you're beaten. He tipped his hat mockingly. Enjoy your farm, Mrs. Thompson. Though I have a feeling it won't be yours for much longer. The SUV roared to life, taillights glowing red as it disappeared into the night, the container and Robert's treasure, gone with it. Stephen stood silent, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. For once, his arrogance was gone. But so was the man I thought I knew. You let him take it, he muttered finally, his voice trembling with disbelief. I let him take one container. I corrected coldly. His head jerked up. One. I met his eyes, my expression hard. Did you really think Robert, and I put all our faith in one place? That everything was under that tree. For the first time, Stephen looked unsure.
Confused.
There are others, I said. More than you'll ever know. And I will not let you, or Benson, touch them. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His face shifted between anger, shame, and something else I couldn't name. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed toward his car, the gravel crunching beneath his footsteps. When the silence returned, I sank to my knees, staring at the freshly disturbed soil. Benson had taken a piece of our legacy, but not all of it. Not by a long shot. Still, the danger was real now. He knew the truth. He'd tasted blood. And men like him didn't stop once they got a sniff of fortune. I clenched my fists, fire burning in my veins. Robert's secret wasn't gone. Not yet. And if Benson thought I was going to sit quietly while he hunted down the rest, he was dead wrong. This was no longer about money. It was about war. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. Every creak of the farmhouse, every rustle outside the window, felt like a warning that Benson was back. My revolver never left my side, and I patrolled the backyard like a soldier guarding a battlefield. But it wasn't just Benson I worried about. It was Stephen. He hadn't returned since that night, but I knew him well enough to understand that silence wasn't surrender. My son had tasted the possibility of wealth, and greed had sunk its teeth deep into him. On the 4th morning, the mail arrived, and with it a letter that made my blood run cold. Notice of pending sale. It read, in crisp, bureaucratic font, my farm, my life's work, was being petitioned for sale due to family consensus. Stephen and his sister had signed documents claiming I was unfit to manage the estate. My hands shook as I held the paper. It wasn't just betrayal now. It was theft sanctioned by law. My own children were trying to rip the ground out from under me. I called the lawyer immediately, but his voice was sympathetic and firm. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. With 2 signatures against you, the sale is in motion. Unless you have evidence of coercion or fraud, the process is difficult to stop. Evidence. The word hung heavy in the air. That night, as the wind rattled the shutters, I sat at Robert's old desk and pulled out his journal, the one where he'd written everything, planting schedules, rainfall records, even the first notes about what he'd buried. My fingers traced the ink, my heart aching. Robert had trusted me to keep this place safe, to protect the secrets we'd built together. And now it was slipping away. But as I flipped through the pages, I found something I'd overlooked before. A coded map, small marks drawn into the margins, aligning with entries about deep planting and soil reinforcement. My pulse quickened. Robert hadn't buried just one container. He'd buried many. Dozens, maybe. And suddenly, I realized what Benson didn't know. The tree Stephen had dug under? That was just the beginning. The very next evening, I saw headlights on the dirt road again. Benson's SUV, rolling slow, followed by 2 trucks. My chest tightened. This wasn't a visit. This was a raid. I stepped outside, revolver at my hip, and waited on the porch as the vehicles pulled into the yard. Benson stepped out first, dressed in his usual smugness, his men fanning out behind him like shadows. Evening, Mrs. Thompson, he drawled. I'm here on business. This is private property, I snapped. Turn those trucks around. He laughed. Oh, it won't be private for long. Your kids are smart, you know. Filed the papers to sell this place. Soon enough, it'll be mine legally. But I'm not a patient man. So, let's speed things up, shall we? His men began unloading shovels, floodlights, even a small backhoe from the trucks. You can't, I hissed, fury boiling in my veins. This land isn't yours yet. Benson shrugged. Details, details. By the time the ink dries, I'll already know where every last dollar is hidden. Saves me the trouble later. I raised the revolver. Take one more step and I swear I'll... Shoot, he finished, grinning. Go ahead. Fire a bullet. By the time the sheriff gets here, you'll be the crazy old woman who pulled a gun on honest men doing work. And I'll be the poor victim, just trying to protect his investment.
His confidence chilled me.
He wasn't bluffing, he'd already spun the story in his head, a tale that made me the villain. But before I could respond, another set of headlights cut through the night. A beat-up sedan, speeding down the dirt road, tires spitting gravel. The car skidded to a stop, and Stephen stumbled out, his face pale, his eyes wild. "Stop," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You can't dig here." Benson raised an eyebrow. Well, well. Look who grew a conscience. Stephen ran forward, his chest heaving. "You don't understand. There's more buried here, but it's not just money. Dad left other things. Things that could destroy you if you find them." My heart clenched. He'd read the journal. He knew. Benson laughed, loud and cruel. "Destroy me? Oh, son, the only thing I see buried here is opportunity. And you just confirmed it." He snapped his fingers, and the men started the backhoe. Its engine roared to life, drowning out the night. "No!" Stephen lunged, grabbing Benson by the arm, but one of the men shoved him to the ground. He hit hard, coughing, his face twisted with pain. I rushed forward, my revolver aimed square at Benson's chest. "Call them off. Now." He glanced at the barrel pointed at him, then at me, then at Stephen writhing in the dirt. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You wouldn't," he said, though his voice wasn't as steady as before. "I protected this land for 40 years. I hissed, my finger tightening. Don't think for a second I won't protect it again." The backhoe's claw swung forward, lowering toward the earth. My pulse raced. If they broke ground, they'd find something, one of Robert's caches, maybe worse. Secrets that weren't meant for greedy men. "Stop," I shouted, my voice raw. "Or I swear to God, Benson, you'll never leave this yard alive." The men hesitated. The engine idled, the claw hovering inches above the soil. All eyes turned to Benson. For a moment, the night held its breath. Then Benson raised his hand, signaling his men to pause. His smile had faded, replaced with something colder, sharper. "Fine," he said softly. "Have it your way, Mrs. Thompson. But you can't stop what's coming. Your kids want this land sold. And when it's mine, I'll dig until there's nothing left. You can delay me tonight, but you can't stop me forever." He gestured, and his men packed up slowly, reluctantly, the roar of the backhoe dying into silence. The trucks rolled away, taillights glowing like embers in the dark. When the yard was quiet again, I lowered the revolver, my arms trembling. Stephen staggered to his feet, his eyes meeting mine. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't know it would go this far. I thought." I cut him off, my voice heavy with sorrow. "You thought only of yourself. And now we've woken a wolf that will never stop hunting." The wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the weight of everything Robert had left behind. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. And I was running out of time. The night Benson retreated, silence returned to the farm. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm, thick and heavy, pressing down on my chest. I knew Benson wasn't gone for good. Men like him didn't give up. They regrouped. The next morning, I found Stephen sitting on the porch, his eyes red, his shoulders slumped. For once, he looked less like my son and more like a stranger who had aged overnight. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm sorry." The words were bitter on his tongue, awkward and halting, but there was no comfort in them. He had already signed my farm away, handed Benson the keys. Sorry wasn't enough. "You betrayed me," I said flatly, staring past him at the fields Robert and I had broken our backs to raise. "You betrayed your father's memory." Stephen flinched but didn't argue. He knew it was true. I pulled Robert's journal from my lap and set it between us. "Do you even understand what you almost unleashed?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "I read some of it, but it didn't make sense. Codes, strange notes, it wasn't just money, was it?" I looked at him, my heart heavy. Robert buried wealth, yes. Gold, bonds, cash he never trusted the banks with. But that wasn't all. He also buried documents, records of things that powerful men would kill to bury deeper.
Names.
Deals. Secrets tied to Benson and his kind. Stephen's eyes widened. You mean? Yes, I said sharply. The kind of secrets that could topple men who think they're untouchable. That's why Benson wants this land. Not just for what's buried, but for what it means. For a moment, silence hung between us. Then Stephen whispered, "What do we do?" I closed the journal. We prepare. The days blurred together as Benson tightened his grip. Letters from lawyers, visits from men in suits, threats wrapped in polite smiles. Trucks parked at the edge of my property at night, headlights off, engines rumbling like wolves circling prey. Stephen stayed, torn between shame and resolve. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he realized the weight of responsibility. He worked the fields with me, fixed the fences, guarded the nights. I saw a flicker of the boy he once was, the one Robert had hoped he'd become. But Benson was circling closer. And I knew he'd strike soon. It came on a moonless night. Headlights cut across the fields, more than before, 5 trucks, maybe 6. Engines snarled as they rolled into the yard. Men poured out, carrying shovels, crowbars, even rifles slung across their backs. At the center was Benson, his smile sharper than ever. "Evening, Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice carrying over the rumble of engines. "I told you before, you can't stop me forever. Tonight I take what's mine." Stephen stepped forward, his jaw tight. "It's not yours. None of it." Benson chuckled. "You really think you can stop me, boy? You couldn't even stop yourself." I gripped the revolver at my side. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. This was it, the final stand. "Benson," I said, raising my voice, "you walk onto this farm, and you cross a line you'll never come back from. This land has already buried one generation's secrets. It won't hesitate to bury you too." For the first time, Benson's smile faltered. But then he waved his hand, and his men surged forward. The chaos erupted instantly. Shovels dug into the earth, floodlights blazed, the sound of machinery roared. Stephen fought to push them back, shouting, grabbing tools, swinging fists when he had to.
But there were too many.
I fired a shot into the air. The crack split the night, freezing them in place. "You think you're after gold," I shouted. "But Robert buried something else, something you don't want to find." Benson snarled. "Lies." He lunged forward, grabbing the revolver, his face inches from mine. "You can't scare me with ghost stories." But then, the ground itself seemed to answer. The men had dug too far, too recklessly. With a groan, the soil collapsed, revealing a rusted container split open like a wound. Inside wasn't gold or cash. It was stacks of papers, bound in old files, stamped with government seals, names written in bold ink. One of the men yanked a folder free, flipping it open. His face paled. "Boss, these are real." "It's..." Benson snatched the papers, his eyes scanning the pages. His smirk faded. His jaw clenched. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. "This," he muttered, his voice low. "This could ruin me." I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "It will. And not just you. Every man who ever thought he was untouchable." The weight of the papers hung heavy in his hands. His men looked at him uneasily, the bravado drained from their faces. They hadn't signed up to bury themselves alive. Benson's breath quickened. He dropped the files back into the dirt, his composure cracking. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You can't keep this buried forever." "No," I said softly, lowering the revolver. "But I can decide who digs it up. And it won't be you." For the first time, Benson had no reply. He backed away slowly, signaling his men. One by one, they retreated, their trucks roaring back down the dirt road until the farm was silent again. When it was over, Stephen slumped against the porch, his body trembling. "We did it," he whispered. I stood over the open pit, staring at the scattered papers glinting in the floodlight. Not gold, not bonds. Something far more dangerous. No, I said quietly. We only delayed it. Benson will be back. Others will come too. This farm isn't just ours anymore. It's a vault. And we're the last guard standing. Stephen looked at me, his eyes haunted. What do we do now? I closed Robert's journal one final time, tucking it under my arm. My voice was steady, even as my heart broke with the weight of it all. We fight. We protect it. And when the time is right, we decide whether the world is ready to know what's been buried here all along. The wind swept across the fields, carrying with it the echoes of Robert's legacy. The farm stood scarred but unbroken. And as I looked at the dark horizon, I knew one thing for certain. The battle for this land wasn't the end.